Back to my channel, The Global Chessboard. Today, we're diving into a really high-stakes accusation from a former top U.S. official, and it's aimed squarely at India's Prime Minister, directly connecting him to the war in Ukraine.
And there it is. Just let that sink in for a second. That's the direct quote from Peter Navarro, who, as you know, was a senior trade advisor to former President Donald Trump. He absolutely did not mince words, declaring that the conflict in Ukraine is, in his view, Modi's war.
Now, a statement like that, wow, it really sends shockwaves through the geopolitical world, especially since it's happening when trade relations are already pretty tense. So in this explainer, we're going to get to the bottom of it. Is this a valid checkmate move, or is it just a massive strategic bluff?
Okay, so first things first, let's unpack the accusation itself. To really get it, you need to understand that Navarro's case is built on a very specific four-point argument.
So here's the logic he lays out, kind of like a set of dominoes. Step 1, he says Russia's war machine is funded mostly by its oil sales. Simple enough. Step 2, he points out that India has become the #1 buyer of that Russian oil, snapping it up at a discount. Step 3, he connects those two dots, arguing that because India is buying so much, it's directly funding and dragging out the conflict. And all of that leads him to his really explosive conclusion in Step 4. Therefore, it's Modi's war.
But he doesn't stop there. He takes it a huge step further with this next statement. By saying the road to peace runs through New Delhi, Navarro is basically arguing that India isn't just some player in the conflict. It actually holds the key to ending it. He is putting the responsibility for finding peace squarely on Prime Minister Modi's shoulders.
And you know, the tone here is just as important as the words themselves. Navarro has publicly called Indian officials arrogant for how they've defended their position. See, India has consistently said, hey, we have a sovereign right to buy energy from whoever we want to meet our country's needs. It's a stance that Navarro seems to just completely dismiss.
All right, so that's the accusation. How did India respond? What was their counter-move on this chessboard? Well, they put forward a pretty clear, multi-pronged defense.
First and foremost, India's External Affairs Ministry is framing this as a matter of pure national necessity. Their argument is, look, our top priority has to be getting affordable energy for 1.4 billion people. They also stress that these are market-driven decisions, not purely political ones. And this next part is crucial. They maintain that all of their oil purchases are perfectly legal. They don't violate any international sanctions or laws. And finally, they kind of just point to the obvious. They're not the only ones. A lot of other countries, including giants like China, are also buying Russian energy.
Now, this is where India's counterargument gets really sharp. They're highlighting what they see as a glaring double standard. They point out that while the U.S. uses all this strong language to condemn China, its actual concrete actions, we're talking heavy economic tariffs, are being aimed at a democratic partner, India. This idea of hypocrisy is a central piece of their rebut.
Okay, so we've heard both sides of the story. Let's step back and really analyze the play here. How valid is this Modi's war claim when you put it under a microscope?
Right off the bat, the biggest problem critics point to is that it's a massive oversimplification. To just single out India ignores the really complex reality of the global energy market. I mean, Russia isn't just selling oil to India. It's selling huge amounts to countries like China and Turkey, too. So blaming India alone just overlooks these other major players who are also adding to Russia's bottom line. Then you've got the second major critique, which is all about the legal and, well, practical realities on the ground. Like, India keeps saying it's not actually breaking any international laws. And on a practical level, think about it. Even if India stopped buying Russian oil tomorrow, would that oil just stay in the ground? Probably not. Russia would almost certainly just find other buyers for it somewhere else.
And that brings us to the third big critique. A lot of analysts are saying this phrase, Modi's war, isn't really a factual assessment at all. It's political rhetoric, plain and simple. It's seen as a deliberate pressure tactic, a way to try and force India to change its foreign policy, not an accurate description of what's actually happening.
So this isn't just some academic debate, right? This war of words has real-world consequences, with very real costs to trade, to global alliances, and to the economy.
And you can see the economic hit right here. The U.S. tariffs are directly targeting key Indian industries, like garments, footwear, and chemicals. And of course, when American companies look for cheaper options, who picks up the business that India loses? Yup, it's regional competitors, like Vietnam and Bangladesh.
But the damage goes way beyond just dollars and cents. The geopolitical fallout here is huge. This kind of public fight just erodes trust between Washington and New Delhi. It threatens to weaken really important strategic partnerships like the Quad, which was set up specifically to increase cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. It's a big deal.
So where does all this leave us? We're at the endgame now. With tensions this high, what's the next move on the board?
Broadly speaking, it looks like there are two main paths forward, and they're pretty different. On one hand, you've got the path of diplomatic compromise. Maybe India agrees to scale back its purchases of Russian oil a bit, and in return the US gets rid of some of those damaging tariffs. But on the other hand, there's a much more dangerous path, trade escalation, where the US slaps on even more tariffs, India retaliates, and you've got a full-blown trade war on your hands.
And so, that leaves us with this final, really challenging question. This whole controversy boils down to a classic showdown between a nation's sovereign right to do what's best for itself and the immense pressure coming from a global superpower. It forces us to ask, on the global chessboard today, when national interest and international pressure collide, who really gets to write